All right, what's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary, and I'm here with my beautiful wife. Say hi, boo.
Hi, everyone. I'm Akdi, and I'm from Turkey. And today we are reviewing a tragic, real life inspired story movie called The Killing Fields.
Oh, yes. And this was a fan request from our longtime subscriber and supporter. His name is Hi Seaman. I invited him to the review, so hopefully he joins later, and hopefully he enjoys this. And this is a 1984 war historical drama. It's the greatest bromance story of all time, greater than Forrest Gump, greater than any buddy cop movie, better than Lethal Weapon. It's a romance. It's drama. It brought a little tear to my eye at the end a little bit. But
Wow.
I watched it last night, and I think Akdi finished it this afternoon. How did you feel after you watched it?
I have to say, I'm not sure why I feel this way about this movie, but I thought it was a bit boring. Not because of the story it's telling. Obviously, I value the story, and it's an important story to be told because the Cambodian Civil War, I just looked it up, and, this war inflicted random death and mutilation on 2 million trapped civilians. And it's an important story to tell, I think. But for me, the first half of the movie especially was just too long, and it was a bit draggy, though I loved the acting and things. I was a bit I wanted to get the story.
Yeah.
And get to the juice of it, and maybe that's brutal to say.
Yeah, I feel a little guilty. When we started watching this film, you were a bit sleepy. I was a bit tired. It was late at night, and I was like, let's just start it. And despite it's 2.5 hours of runtime, I was like, let's do it. And I just raw dogged the movie, just stayed up, and you fell asleep on the couch. So I actually apologize. Maybe I kind of ruined the experience by setting it up that way.
I mean, today I watched it during the morning, basically. But yeah, I don't know. I usually like war movies or historical dramas, actually. And they make me cry all the time. This one didn't do that. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the movie or just my mood of not wanting to watch something heavy.
Yeah, it is a heavy movie, and it's a movie from the 80s, and I've made this clear all the time. I generally dislike movies from the 80s. If I see 1980 on a film, I probably will not watch it. So, I don't know if you feel the same about 80s films.
Yeah, I mean, I think some old movies are worth watching, but most of the time that's not my first pick.
Yeah. And most of the time it's because of the special effects they use sometimes, or some of the themes might be a bit outdated.
Or dialogue.
The dialogue or the wording of things might be a bit off for me. I just if it's the 70s or 90s, I could do it. But that whole decade is a bit weird for me for watching cinema. But,
okay, but what did you think about the movie?
Overall, I appreciate it for being an important story and not being so, I could say, knowing that the film was an American film told about the Cambodian Civil War, I thought it was going to be propaganda against communism, right?
It was actually a British movie.
British movie. Okay, well, even still, British movie about this story could have still had a heavy slant about this is anti-communist and, that sort of stuff. But it didn't end up being that. It really is the story about two guys who really just love each other, and they don't have the words to say it because they speak different languages. Their cultures don't really allow it. Homophobic 80s, homophobic Cambodia.
Wow. I mean, I don't know if it could be Brokeback Mountain, but, it was a cute bromance, I would say.
This has more love in it than Brokeback Mountain.
You did not see Brokeback Mountain, so you cannot say.
I didn't see it.
Don't have a say in it.
You know what I found out the other day? The same guy who made Brokeback Mountain made Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Did you know that?
No, I don't know Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Oh, it's like a kung fu classic movie. It was like one of the biggest movies. Like,
Oh,
yeah,
well, that's very, unexpected.
yeah,
And that's why you should watch Brokeback Mountain and we should review it.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
great drama.
The director is Ang Lee. Ang Lee made a Hulk film, Brokeback Mountain, and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And I'm like, he's trying to be Ridley Scott. Like, that's a guy who wants the Ridley Scott pedigree.
Wow.
But let's just give a little bit of background on this story. So this movie was based on a book, and it was directed by Roland Joffé. And the book's title was The Death and Life of Dith Pran. And it was written by a New York Times journalist named Cindy Shanberg, who is like the main character of this film, or one of the main characters. And that book that he wrote recounts his experiences and his relationship with his Cambodian colleague, who was his translator, named Dith Pran. And it's a tale of like survival, friendship, war, and atrocities during the Khmer Rouge regime, which was a communist regime that took over Cambodia after their civil war, which started after the fight for independence in Vietnam. Cambodia and Vietnam are bordered. They border each other in Southeast Asia, and to some degree, like America sort of kick-started what happened in Cambodia. Like America likes to say like, oh, the Khmer Rouge were so bad, but it's sort of like our fault because the Vietnamese people wanted to be free from France. And so did the Cambodian people too. So the Cambodians start fighting a war of independence against the French. And America sort of like tries to back up the French in suppressing the Vietnamese people, because guess who Vietnam is also close to? It's close to Russia. And Russia was communist at the time. And Russia was trying to support independence movements, not because they like loved the people, but just because they wanted to piss off America and the West. So like, we fight a war in Vietnam that kills like millions of civilians. That spills over into Cambodia. They have a civil war. Communists come to power there and commit atrocities. So it's just a big mess. Like, did you know much about the history of that, conflict in region?
Somewhat, but I would say mostly from other movies that mentioned. There was like, some of the movies about like some war journalists or some soldiers from the US. I don't remember the names of the movies, but I sort of knew it from there about like the Civil War, but I didn't know the impact of America on the war. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that this movie like highlighted, because if you're talking about a civil war, it's so easy to blame like the inside conflicts, mm-hmm. but you don't know actually like what other, international factors go into it.
Yeah.
So I think that was like something that this movie taught me.
Yeah, yeah, because like you said, Akdi, when you hear civil war, you just think, oh, people are fighting each other, right? But like many civil wars have started in this world because of outside influences. Like Syria had a civil war because of what started in Tunisia. They had an uprising and that spread all across the Arab world. And, that's how we have Yemen and Syria like they are today. So same thing in Cambodia too. So yeah, I think we also tried to watch a film many, many years ago called First They Killed My Father, which was about the Cambodian Civil War. We spoke about that. You remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember saying like, I'm just not feeling this film. I don't know why. Something about it. It's not about the story. It was just about the way it was shot, I guess.
From what I remember, I think I liked that movie better. Mm-hmm. Just because I remember that I cried during that movie. So I don't know. It just had a more bigger impact on me in terms of like emotions. But this movie was, like it was a movie, but it did have like very realistic feel to it. Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't amped up that much in terms of, the story or the cinematography. So maybe that's why I sort of like fall for those Hollywood things,
I got you. I just remember that First They Killed My Father. It was mostly about being in those re-education camps that they had in Cambodia. So just some more historical context for people that are tuning in now. The film is set against the backdrop of the Cambodian Civil War, and that began in the early 70s. And the conflict saw the government forces battling the communist insurgents known as the Khmer Rouge, and they were led by this guy named Pol Pot. The Khmer Rouge, an extremist communist regime, would ultimately seize control of the country in 1975, leading to one of the most horrific genocides of the 20th century. I think they say something like 2 million people were killed, maybe even 4 million. And the regime sought to transform Cambodia into a radical agrarian society. And that forced people to relocate. They also did mass executions, and starvation and disease spread all across the country. And that dark period in Cambodian history is referred to as the killing fields. And that's there are still now mass graves all over Cambodia. And that film, First They Killed My Father, is mostly about the time in the fields and how those camps worked. But I felt like the one in this movie was better done. I felt like it was I don't know. I just like the way that they shot it, that part of the Cambodian story in this film rather than First They Killed My Father.
I mean, yeah, the place and the setting is the same, but I feel like First They Killed My Father sort of focuses on the indoctrination of young kids during the war. And then this one more is focused on okay, so there was this man who was smart, who knew multiple languages, right? The Cambodian man. And what happens to, this guy when war happens, and, basically someone who cannot be indoctrinated.
Yeah.
Like a child. So it's a bit different. And
yeah, it is.
I don't know,
Different.
that movie just affected me also in that sense.
Yeah, it is a different perspective because that movie is about a child's point of view going through that, and they're an orphan. And this is about a grown man who's, being worked like a slave in the fields. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I gotta say, there was a scene in the fields where this little girl is running these grown men at the tip of a gun, saying work, bitch, work. I was like, she is so hard. She is hardcore. I love her.
Wow, you think that was the girl from First They Killed My Father?
Yeah, these exist in the same universe, literally.
Yeah.
They literally could have been at the same camp together. By the way, I've met some people that have went to Cambodia, some Westerners. I went to Indonesia. I was working with some British guys, and the British guys said Cambodia is like the Wild West. There's guns all over the country. There's drugs everywhere. It's hella cheap. It's kind of rad. It's a landlocked country, so they don't have a beach. But, food is good, of course, because it's Southeast Asia and motorbikes everywhere. This British guy said he went to Cambodia and shot a rocket launcher at a cow. And I'm like,
wow.
that is a wild place.
That's crazy. I always wanted to go there as well, just because of the temples.
Mm-hmm.
They have these temples, Buddhist temples that are just inside the forest.
Yeah.
And it sort of reminds me of the Aztecs or the Incas.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of has that sort of feeling. And I just thought they always looked so cool. But yeah.
Yeah.
I would still want to go. I mean, possibly if I can.
Yeah, by the way the country looks in the film, it is beautiful. There's mountains that look little cups turned upside down. Why did God make a mountain looking like a weird shaped boob,
Those are the temples.
No, but there's mountains too. That was the geography. I don't know if you saw in the background, in the fields and stuff.
Oh, okay. Maybe I didn't. Maybe for me it didn't resemble weird titties.
Yeah, I love mountains, so I'm just always looking at scenery like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, let's walk through this story a bit. I got a description of the story from ChatGPT, so I'm mostly going to be reading from that, but we're going to be giving our opinions on, what we remember from these parts. So we have the movie divided into 5 acts, and I have a few paragraphs describing the first act right here. So, the film opens in 1973 during the height of the U.S. military's involvement in Southeast Asia, Cambodia. Though neutral in the Vietnam War, it has been drawn into the conflict as American forces bomb parts of the country to disrupt Vietnamese communist supplies. At the same time, the Cambodian government, under the leadership of Lon Nol, is fighting the Khmer Rouge insurgency. Okay, I forgot about that. Yeah, basically, Cambodia was not involved in the Vietnam War, but we thought Vietnamese soldiers we were fighting were there, so we bombed Cambodia. Yeah, that sounds a lot like what's happening today. That just sounds eerily similar to what's happening in another part of the world where people are fighting over land.
Yeah. But it's like, but it was like an accident.
No, it wasn't an
Or
accident. We don't
wasn't.
bomb on accident.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's still like something that is very, very shitty and bad that, you know,
Yeah.
America would do to play with people's lives like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's fucked up.
Yeah, no, I'm more than certain it was definitely on purpose. And the funny thing is, like, the guys are like, we know the Vietnamese in there. We can see them. They look different. I'm sure there was those guys like, we can tell. Look at
Yeah.
them.
I mean, I just have to say, the other day I was talking with my friend about like Palestine and what's happening in Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you know, the thing is like, these stuff like this happened before in a lot of places around the world where America, you know, killed people or caused conflict between,
Mm-hmm.
you know, groups in a country and, or
Mm-hmm.
took advantage of the conflicts and
Mm-hmm.
killed more people. And
Yeah.
then they make movies about it. And then they
Yeah.
say they are sorry, but it's literally happening right now. So then
Dog,
what's been learned? And nothing.
dog, 30 years from now, so many Arab American actresses and actors will have fire careers based on all the movies on like the West Bank. Like,
Yeah, but like, is that, like, is that the path that should be happening?
it's a type of reparations, okay? That's how America gives reparations.
Yeah, to make like more Arab Americans rich and capitalists.
Yeah, make them movie stars. Don't you want to be Zendaya?
Wow. It's just like something I wanted to point out.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Thank you for pointing that out. By the way, I emailed you what I'm reading, so if you want to open it and follow along too, because I don't want you to get like, lost in the sauce. But
Okay.
yeah, so basically the movie is focused on this guy, Cindy Shanberg, and he is an ambitious and seasoned American journalist, and he's covering the war from Phnom Penh. I hope I said that right. And that's the capital of Cambodia. So he is eager to expose the U.S. military's secret bombing campaigns in Cambodia and to document the unfolding civil war. Shanberg relies heavily on Dith Pran, a highly intelligent and resourceful Cambodian photojournalist who serves as his interpreter, guide, and friend. Their relationship is one of mutual respect and dependence. Shanberg is driven by his desire to report the truth, no matter the cost, and Pran is equally committed to helping his country and ensuring that the world understands the horrors that are befalling Cambodia. Together they cover the atrocities of the war, and their reporting garners international attention. Despite the increasing danger, Shanberg decides to stay in Cambodia even as the situation becomes more precarious. And Pran, out of loyalty to Shanberg and his country, remains by his side. So there were a lot of scenes that happened in generally that first act. The most memorable one for me is like all the times that Sandy, I call him Sandy, but his name is Sandy, right? Yeah.
Sydney.
Sydney. I don't know why I want to call him Cheryl, Sandy, Sweet Pea. I don't know why. Sydney, he
Wow.
does not look like a Sydney. Number one.
Yeah, it's a weird name. Sydney. I think of Sydney Sweeney.
Yes, yes. Sydney is a unisex name that has now fully been adopted by the feminine gender. Like a man named Sydney nowadays, you're gonna have a rough life. But yeah, the thing that I remember is like all the times he was like harassing those like government officials, like tell me what's happening in Dok Bon or whatever, like whatever city, and the government officials like no comment, no comment, and he is like arguing with the guys like if you don't let me go, you're violating the Manson and Richmond Act or something like that. And I'm like, that's such a weird way to argue with an army guy. Like, you can't let me go. You're violating my rights in Cambodia, far away, where nobody will know if you kill me. I just thought that was interesting. But I like the scene when he like finally makes it to this place where like the US government like bombed this innocent village, and we see the horror in this atrocity. Like you see the legs blown off, you see the little kids crying because their parents are dead, people trying to sell whatever they can find and stuff like that. And I like how in general in this movie they show the horrors of war and they don't hide from it. So That was my most memorable part of Act One. For you?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things I was thinking about that, goddamn, like, I wish we had someone like Dith with us in Africa. Because, like, this man was, like, just the perfect comrade to hang out with, you know?
Yeah.
Because, yeah, he was, like, he was kind of quiet, but he got shit done. And he was helping Sydney, like, with, you know, everyone, basically communicating with everyone. But then Sydney, I guess, was sort of helping him in a way, like getting him to certain places, you know, being able to talk to certain officials and things like that. And also, of course, to tell about what is happening in Cambodia. So I like I like that team in the beginning, and it felt like a true friendship and not like a servant and the intellectual, you know, type of friendship.
Right. Well, I was a bit worried because I didn't know where the film was going. So I didn't know if like Dith was like a hanger-on, you know what I mean? And like Sydney is going to expose himself to be like just a callous American who's like, we came here to do a job. Now I have to go home, Dith. I'm sorry. You know what I mean? Like fake friendship would be revealed. But no, it didn't turn out like that. But at the beginning of the film, I was just feeling Sydney out more than Dith. And yeah, I don't know if you were thinking that too.
Not specifically, no, because it felt like this guy, Sydney, he respected generally Cambodia. And also in the beginning, he says like, oh, I don't remember the exact sentence, but something like, this is the story of a country that I love and pity.
Yeah.
So it felt like he was, you know, wanting to really actually get to the bottom of things, and he actually respected like everyone who lived there. And so I didn't feel like that was going to happen, but you know, I didn't know where it was going. Like I didn't know what was going to happen to either of them. But I like those like sort of scenes where, I don't know, they pay to the soldiers to get on their boat, and then they go into the war scene, like you said, and we see everything. Like these kids without their arms and legs, they're crying, and mothers are searching for their, you know, child. And there was like one scene where child like had his guts blown out, basically. Those were like really hard scenes to see, but it also makes you realize like what war is really about.
Yeah, but I was feeling Sydney out a bit because if you remember, like at the beginning of the film, Sydney makes it to Cambodia. He shows up at the hotel and he meets up with his photographer, and his photographer is like hungover, drunk. He probably is like recovering from gonorrhea that he caught for the third time, sleeping with like Cambodian hookers and stuff like that. And so they go out to a cafe and have coffee, and then a car bomb explodes, and his friend photographer jumps up and just starts snapping the pictures of like dead bodies instantly, which on one hand, like that's his job, but it's sort of like kind of gross, you know, how he was like, yeah, I got it. Because you know, he's thinking like, bruh, I might win a prize for this. I might get a Pulitzer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. But the reality is that he has to document those things in order for the world to see. It's a conflict, like it's a moral conflict in a way, because like the thing is like you don't also know like if he could help anyone, because there are people who need like medical assistance most of the time. So it's like not that he can do something really, but then he also chooses to document it. Which feels a bit exploitative, so I get it. Like the feeling of it is just like was exploitative. And I have to also like add, I also like that those like brands, American brands like Mercedes and Coca-Cola, they were like around all the time. Like in the war scene, there was a child playing with a Mercedes like symbol from a car. Which is like a good symbolism, because I think it's sort of giving what people think of America and Americans, and they think America is protecting them and, you know, is looking out for them and all those things. So when in reality, like America sort of is starting the conflict as well.
Yeah, it's that weird perversion that happens in the mind. Like even though these people are like fighting to get the Americans out, they're like Coca-Cola, Johnny Walker. By the way, the amount of alcohol in Coca-Cola in this film is ungodly. Like we never see stacks of food, but I'm looking in the background and I'm seeing like all sorts of vodka and whiskey and bottles of Jack Daniels just piled up in the back. And I'm like, that is the only way to survive a war, I guess. Like,
Wow, yeah. I mean, at the time, I think Coca-Cola was just like shipping everywhere.
yeah.
It was like the high demand, especially in a country so hot like, Southeast Asia, those countries.
That goes to show like Coca-Cola does not give a fuck. Like they just want to advertise anywhere. Cause Coca-Cola had to give the thumbs up to say, yeah, let's have our product prominently displayed all throughout this war-torn movie. Like
Yeah.
a
And
movie
like
about
drunken by, the terrorists, basically.
yeah, let Coke for everybody. Coke for the terrorists, Coke for the communists, Coke for the journalists.
Yeah,
Everybody has Coke.
it's like you have this, but then you also have those family ads where everyone drinks Coca-Cola together happily.
That's just how you make $1 billion. I was arguing with somebody today. You can't make $1 trillion without doing something wild. Like, yeah, advertising your product in a movie about genocide has to be a top level sin. Like that's, God does not love that.
Yeah, like someone came to the CEO and said, so yeah, there's this movie about like, killing a lot of people in Cambodia. And yeah, they want to be in it. They want us to be in it. And CEO was like, sure, sure.
He's like, do it now.
Yeah. He was like, how much are they paying us?
How much are they paying? Yes. By the way, this film was mostly shot in Thailand because at the time, this movie was made when the Khmer Rouge was like still in power in Cambodia. So, yeah, when I was talking earlier about like how the scenes look, because I'm looking at the movie now when the guys are like fighting outside and there's like the tropical trees and all that. This is Thailand too. So just wanted to give that.
Okay. I mean, I think they are close and like the nature is similar, I would like assume.
Yeah. I also wanted to talk about the scene very briefly. So basically, Sydney and Dith show up at the bombing site where America killed a bunch of civilians and like Khmer Rouge, I believe, show up or like the government forces show up. I'm not exactly sure.
I think it was the government forces because they executed Khmer Rouge
Oh
like
yeah.
soldiers.
Yeah. So the government forces pull up in a Jeep with a bunch of like Khmer Rouge soldiers and they like execute them and Sydney is trying to like videotape it and they say, no camera, no camera. And they like arrest them and they hold Sydney and Dith in like this hot room and Sydney says, I want a cigarette and I gotta piss. And Dith goes to ask and Dith comes back and says, no cigarette, no piss. and Sydney says, what you mean no piss? I just thought that's hilarious. Like that's what war is like. Like you are just trapped. Like no piss.
Yeah, that's like, because yeah, Sydney is for the Cambodian people, but he does have advantages as a white person, a white
Yeah.
American. Like he stays in a fancy hotel with other expats, I guess, other journalists and things like that. And he
Yeah.
can eat at fancy cafes and yeah, possibly like Cambodian people like respect him and things like that. But in that scene, he's hit in the face of like not having privilege anymore.
Not anymore. And like he tries to like storm out of his jail cell and there's like a 17-year-old Cambodian boy with like a automatic rifle just pointed at his chest ready to blow his fucking head off. Like that
Yeah.
was hard.
And also like, I guess we can also think about, first they killed my father at this part, but I feel like a good like 80% of the soldiers we see in the movie are teenagers or children.
Yes.
As well, which was also like very, striking.
Which in general they are. Like in most countries around the world, like you join the army at what, 18? Is it the same in Turkey?
I think it's later.
Really? Okay. Well, in the U.S., you can, get a gun and fly out across the world and shoot some other people at 18 years old. They will let you do that. So,
I mean, like you can go at 18, but the mandatory service, I think you can do like when you're 25 or something.
Yeah, yeah. But, this is probably a bit different because the kid soldiers we're seeing in this film, they look like they had no choice. It's either join this side or that side or die,
Yeah.
But, there was also that interesting contrast between like what you said, Sydney goes to his fancy hotel and then we see the other, British people and French people there and they're like swimming in a swimming pool and like, drinking fancy liquor and stuff like that. And then they contrast back outside to like the Cambodians living in poverty. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know if any of them were like Sydney or maybe better than Sydney or worse. But yeah, it's basically like, when the war is about to happen and they're by the pool and making jokes and things like that, which is kind of gave that vibe of like, oh yeah, these rich, foreigners who are just here for basically fun. Not fun in the, basic way, but like it felt more exploitative, if that makes sense. But it also, we see like Sydney not really wanting to be a part of that conversation, so he takes off.
Yeah, he's not participating at all, really, in those activities. But those guys were having the time of their lives. Boy, they were probably shooting rocket launchers at cows.
Wow. Okay.
Anyway, picking up in the story. So the war starts to escalate and the Khmer Rouge close in on Phnom Penh. So the U.S. begins to withdraw the personnel from Cambodia. The chaos in the city becomes palpable, with residents fearing for their lives as the Khmer Rouge prepares to overtake the capital. Schanberg, obsessed with his journalistic mission, refuses to leave, despite warnings from the U.S. Embassy and colleagues that Phnom Penh is on the verge of collapse. So, yeah, what did you think about, Sydney's decision to like stay and report the story and like, him telling, Dith, you can either go or stay, right? And Dith says like, it's in my blood. I'm journalist too. But so what did you think about, those parts?
Yeah, I mean, I understand that by choosing to stay there, he's putting his life in danger. But at the same time, once again, he has that privilege of getting out of that situation anytime. At least more than Dith, sorry. At least more than Dith, because it's Dith's country, whatever war happens there, he's stuck with it. But, Sydney, being a journalist, I guess somewhat like famous, so he does have the chance to, I don't know, get a helicopter from Vietnam or from Thailand and, be taken out, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think he sort of went in with that, how do you say that? Like privilege, and also with like the adventurous seeking part of his character.
Yeah, we don't know if, Sydney has a wife or kids or anything like that, at that part of the film, though I think it shows he has like his mother at least in his life later on in the film. Do you remember that?
Yeah, his sister and his mom.
Oh, his sister and his mom. So he's a bachelor, right? So he can live a bit more freely. But we know at that point in the film, when the Khmer Rouge is closing in, that Dith has a wife and kids. So I was actually kind of a bit disappointed. He said, I'm going to stay, you know what I mean? Or I don't want to go because like we know he's got more responsibilities than what, Sydney has.
Yeah. And I agree with that. And like at the same time, he sort of has the power to get them out as well. Yeah. And like save one family at least. Mm-hmm. But he chooses not to, act on that. And later on in the movie, it also becomes a conflict between him and his friend as well.
Yeah, yeah. But moving on in the story, we're going to jump to Act 2, and this is the fall of Phnom Penh. So in April 1975, Phnom Penh finally falls to the Khmer Rouge. The victorious insurgents sweep into the city, and in the days that follow, they begin implementing their brutal policies. Now the funny part is like when the Khmer Rouge show up, like Dith is like running with the tanks. He's saying no more war, no more death. Like he's celebrating with the people because generally everybody's celebrating, I guess, which I thought was interesting. Did you notice that?
Yeah, because that's sort of what happens around the world even today. That's when a new government comes in who promise certain things, I guess we believe in them, but they also abuse their power as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's basically like just, I don't know, like fucking up your dreams and, you know, just crushing every trust that you would have for any authority.
Yeah. The interesting thing for me with that part is like everything that happens in American history seems to happen in cycles because literally like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we left Afghanistan and literally the same thing played out. The Taliban rolls into Kabul. People are like celebrating in the streets. They're rolling in tanks and like Toyota pickup trucks and like shooting their guns in the air and stuff like that. Then they break into like the U.S. embassy and they're like using our workout equipment. Like they're on the elliptical in their full Taliban gear. Like
That's hilarious. I'm sorry.
it is. And it's like, we never learn from our mistakes. Like we continue to do the same BS over and over again. Like invade a country, occupy, the rebels come and like take all of our shit and like the people are happy finally. You know what I mean? And then chaos ensues after
Yeah. People are happy for like 1 week.
one day. And then there's always a bunch of people like clamoring at the embassy, like throwing their babies over the walls, like please take my baby out of this hellhole you created. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And that's why we have like tragic movies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, those Gaza films in 40 years from now, they will win Oscar after Oscar after Oscar. I'm telling you.
Yeah, yep. And we're gonna be like just watching and crying.
Like, why didn't they do anything?
And then we're gonna say like, oh, it's so crazy. Like we knew this happened and this was happening in our lifetime.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we're like, I don't know, like invading Cuba. Like we're just like terrorizing Cuba at the time the Gaza movies are coming out. And we're like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Phnom Penh's residents, including children, the elderly, and the infirm, are forcibly evacuated from the city under the guise of protecting them from further American bombing. The Khmer Rouge, however, have no intention of allowing them to return. The evacuation is part of their plan to dismantle urban society and force the population into the countryside to work in agricultural labor camps. Schanberg and Pran attempt to cover the chaotic evacuation of the city, but they quickly find themselves in grave danger. The Khmer Rouge view foreigners and journalists with suspicion, and the regime's xenophobia and anti-intellectual policies put people like Schanberg and Pran at great risk. In a harrowing sequence, Schanberg, Pran, and two other Western journalists, John Swain, played by Julian Sands, from the Sunday Times, and Al Rockoff, who's played by John Malkovich, a photojournalist, are captured by the Khmer Rouge. The group is imprisoned and faces possible execution. Schanberg tries to use his status as an American journalist to negotiate their release, but it is Pran who ultimately saves them. Risking his life, Pran persuades the Khmer Rouge soldiers to spare the foreigners by convincing them that Schanberg and the others are not CIA agents, as the soldiers suspect. The journalists are freed, but the danger remains, and Schanberg knows that Pran's life is at even greater risk. So what did you think about all those scenes?
Yeah. So I mean, I like the fact that Sydney decided to send, you know, Pran's family away to the US, but that was also heartbreaking when like we saw Pran going to his wife and she was crying and we didn't know what he was saying, but yeah. And then basically they go to the embassy and they somewhat like escape, but then he stays behind, which was also heartbreaking and which also proves like most people don't want to leave their countries as well.
Mm-hmm.
And like she was very sad to leave her husband behind also. Like I just imagined that happening to me, and I don't know, like obviously having kids, that's a different commitment. So I might go, but I also don't know what to feel of like leaving you in a war zone country, you know? That possibly thinking and knowing that you're not going to be coming back. But I know also you're a hard head. And you're going to be like, stop being racist and go.
Why would I say stop being racist?
I don't know. You're going to be like, you're not respecting me enough as a black man.
Wow.
Do you think I cannot fight? That's what you're going to say. And then you're going to like force me to leave.
No. For the record, people, I don't be calling Akdi racist all the time. Only during sex and
No, you just call me out when I'm wrong, but I was just joking there.
No. I get what you're saying. No, but yeah, Acti. If I ever say like, you must leave, I have to stay in this country. I'm a live streamer. I'm a YouTuber. I must upload. Like, you better slap me and please leave. Like,
And not take you with me?
yeah, if I'm willing to die because I have to go live at 7 p.m. every day to cover the war, like, please get my ass and just go.
Go with you?
No, go somewhere
Oh,
away
wow.
from me.
Okay, sure. I
I'm like,
mean, I don't know what I would do if I was just alone and without kids. Because that's also like fucked up as well,
hey, you're the one always talking about women are strong. All right, prove it.
Yeah, but I also don't want to die, motherfucker.
You got flown out. You got flown out to America without a man. Jesus, that's a come up.
Wow. But yeah, also I thought like I liked that little friend group that the journalist had. Like there was a British guy and the guy who was played by John Malkovich. I liked his character because, for example, like when Prawn was in danger, he cared about him so much. And I think he's also the guy who got mad at Sydney later on for, leaving him there.
Yeah.
But I really liked his he reminded me of like the journalist from that Johnny Depp movie.
Which Johnny Depp movie? I forgot.
Like the one, God, like they get super high and super,
Oh, yeah, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
yeah,
Gonzo. Dr.
Gonzo
Gonzo.
journalist. Like he reminded me of that sort of journalist, but like also going to the war zones,
Yeah. Now, the character's name was Gonzo, right? Dr. Gonzo.
Yeah. But I really liked his character, but it also seemed like the other journalists were trying to escape Cambodia. Like one of the guys said like, oh, if anything bad happens, you should go to the French embassy because they will take care of it.
Yeah.
So it felt like no one was as passionate as Sydney when it comes to like staying in Cambodia.
I kind of agree and disagree because I feel like they had a chance to leave earlier too, but they decided to stay because they wanted to report, but they didn't know how bad it was going to be. So they kind of got caught in the storm.
I just felt like they were panicking more when compared to like Sydney, and Sydney was just sort of like this adrenaline junkie.
Right. I mean, there was levels to the panic, right? It's like, okay, the Khmer Rouge is coming. Some people are like instantly panicking and they want to leave. Others are like, okay, maybe we can stay. Khmer Rouge starts evacuating people. Okay, now I'm a panic. Other people like, nah, I'm not really. And then the Khmer Rouge starts executing people in the streets. Okay, now we need to.
Wait, I lost you. There's levels, you said,
Yeah,
right?
sorry, my alarm went off. Yeah, I said it's levels. There's different events that happen that turn up the panic.
Yeah. Another scene that was the hospital scene. I don't know if you remember where the journalists go into the hospital.
Yeah.
And it's basically like not like a hospital, there's just like dying and bleeding like kids and humans around and like not enough, staff, not enough equipment, not enough medication to treat anyone. And they're basically like trying to operate at this panic mode. And it just felt like very brutal to see that as well. And I guess that's when they get out of the hospital, they are taken by Khmer Rouge.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, like, I don't know. It's just scary. And as I was watching it, I was thinking, okay, that's the worst way to get banged up abroad. And I think I said that to you as well.
Yes,
like, just imagine being trapped in like 1980s in freaking Cambodia.
Yeah, horrible. And when I was watching all of those scenes, like when they went to the hospital, it was a bit out of place. Like if they cut that part from the film, it wouldn't change the storyline at all. And there's some parts in this film, because this is a 2 hour and 30-minute film. a lot of the extra scenes for the runtime are just, gore porn, like war porn. You know what I mean? Like, let's show everybody every part of how horrific this part of humanity is. You know what I mean? And I don't know what you think about that. Like, would this film still have the same effect if they cut out all of those scenes, like the hospital scene, or like, I don't know, the scenes of Death in the field, like getting his ass kicked by a 7-year-old? Like, would this movie still have the same effect or
I
a
don't
better
think
effect?
I don't think it would, because that's showing the reality of a situation like this.
Mm-hmm.
What I would want to cut out is like, and maybe I'm thinking it was done intentional, but for example, after they are taken over by Khmer Rouge, there's like this whole, like, I don't know, 20 minutes scene where, we see Death trying to convince the guy that is like the head of the gang. And we see like them waiting around and I don't know, just like squatting. And it's like, this takes like 15 minutes. Like, it doesn't have to take
I kind of really
15
like that
minutes.
scene because, Dith is like talking. Number one, in this movie, they never translate the Cambodian. So it's like we don't know what Dith is saying, and it sort of puts you in that terror too if you're watching this as a non-Cambodian speaker. So I like that because you don't know what Dith is saying, but he must be putting the ultimate Mac on these people. Like, please, 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 these my
Yeah.
niggas.
I mean, no, I think that scene should be there, but make it shorter.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it that it's sort of like you can feel the waiting that they have to go through.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the stress of, waiting and hearing those words that they don't understand, and any minute that they could be killed.
Yeah.
And that's like very sufferable, like pain and waiting is, maybe they were trying to depict that by making those long scenes, but it was just like too much for me. And I was like bored in those scenes.
I feel like there should be two versions of this film. There should be like the ADD version, right? Hour 40 minutes, hour 30 minutes, right? Cut out some torture scenes and just get to the point. And then we have director's cut or war porn edition, right? Like for the people that want to see a baby have his chest opened, right? You can see that.
I'm still gonna watch the longer version, right?
But you were saying at the beginning, like this one went on a bit too long.
Yeah, it did, but I'm still gonna watch the long version because I'm gonna be curious.
Okay.
I'm gonna be like, what the fuck are they hiding?
I feel like this story would have been just as effective had they made it a bit shorter, right? Because there's enough gore and blood in the main scenes that those extra scenes didn't add much more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially watching in our 2024 eyes, because to be frank, like I didn't watch anything here that made me feel sick, like other gory movies we've seen. It's just like a realization, like, oh, that happens during war. Like, damn, children get hit with shrapnel,
Yeah, definitely. Like you feel a sense of like, how could this happen to little children?
Yeah.
Like it's sort of like a disbelief moment.
Yeah. So, shall we continue?
Yeah.
So let's go to Act 3, Pran's sacrifice and Schanberg's guilt. So as the Khmer Rouge consolidates its control over Cambodia, foreigners are evacuated from the country. Schanberg is able to leave, but Pran tragically cannot. Schanberg, aware of the grave danger Pran faces if he remains in Cambodia, desperately tries to secure a way out for him and his family. However, despite all efforts, Pran is forced to stay behind as his family is evacuated to safety in the United States. In a deeply emotional farewell, Pran urges Schanberg to leave, sacrificing his own safety for the sake of his friend's mission to report the truth. After Schanberg leaves Cambodia, he returns to New York, where he continues to cover the Cambodian genocide from afar. He is haunted by guilt over Pran's fate, knowing that his friend is likely trapped in the horrific conditions of the Khmer Rouge's labor camps. Schanberg searches for any news of Pran, trying desperately to locate him and secure his release, but there is no word. The uncertainty of Pran's survival weighs heavily on him, and he feels increasingly responsible for having encouraged Pran to stay in Cambodia when they both could have escaped. Any comments on Act 3?
I think there's like two parts of Act 3. Like the first part where, you know, actually Sydney leaves, and the part where they're trying to also get Prawn to come with them. I actually thought Prawn was going to come with them. Like, I believe that it worked. And when it didn't, it was like true devastation for me. But once again, like, yeah, it was picking up a little bit at this point, but at the same time, like, you know, all those scenes of the photographers in the bathroom trying to put the picture and things like that, that was like, okay, like, can we like skip ahead, please?
Yeah, well, just a little context for the listeners. There's this scene where the guys who can leave, the French guys, Schanberg, the British guys, they say, all right, we're going to give Dith a fake passport, put a picture on it that he made, and we'll be able to sneak him out of the country. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that part, I felt like it was like, again, a bit draggy with like some of the other scenes. And there was like a white woman crying because his Cambodian lover had to like go. And I was like, damn.
I missed that scene. I didn't notice that background character.
It was like when his friend told Sydney that they want all the Cambodians out. And then back there, you know, this woman just ran and collapsed to the ground, like crying for his lover.
No, you cannot take him.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, so it was, and it also was like so cute that Dith was trying to memorize his new American name. And it was like the hardest name ever.
Yeah, what was it? Ankertil Brawith, something like that. Brewer. Ankertil Brewer. Ankertil Brewer.
Yeah, and he was like trying to get it perfect. And that was like so cute because you knew at that moment he had hope to get out of the situation with his family, who had already gone to America, and also like with his friends.
He memorized his passport number before I did, and I've had the same one for like 5 years.
Yeah, like, you know, he was so cute, and I really felt horrible when, you know, he got rejected.
Yeah.
Because
if he didn't get rejected, what I think is what happened is like the photo faded away, right? Because they did like this ghetto sort of like development process in the bathroom with like piss water. And it was like, it couldn't hold up to like the sunlight when it got out there.
Yeah, yeah. And then like the official said, I'm sorry, but I cannot like accept this passport. And I was like, fuck it, man. Like, you can't accept it. Like, just say the dude like dropped his passport photo because of the war. I don't know. Something happened, but yeah, I did feel very bad. And I guess like the next part, of it was that, you know, basically Prawn's journey in the killing fields, which was like a long part of the movie as well.
Right.
I liked this part of the movie. It wasn't that draggy because you see like just really brutal scenes here.
Yeah. Well, before we get into that, I want to say I liked the scene where the guys were like trying to come up together with this kooky plan of making the picture and stuff like that, because it built tension. You're like, damn, are they going to be able to do it? Will they get away? Cause it's so like, number one, it's in the 70s and they're trying to like, you know, develop a photo in a dark room, something I've never experienced, right? Like that's technology like before my time. And I'm like, people really used to do that. Like, you really had to like sit in a dark room, like putting pictures and dye and shit. That's so foreign to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like the plan, but I don't think it should be 20 minutes. That's my thing. Like, of course I like the attention and everything, but yeah.
Yeah. I also wanted to comment about different things that were happening at the time. So like the Khmer Rouge is like right outside the gate of the embassy while all these like, you know, foreigners are holed up in it. And these guys are like just like, you know, flipping over cars and like basically being terrorists in the street. And they're patrolling the people inside too, making sure nobody leaves or escapes. And, they also said, you know, we want the leaders, the 5 traitors. And they basically like have to surrender like the former leader of Cambodia to like these 17-year-old, like, you know, new rulers of the country.
Yeah, they were like escaping. They were hiding out in the embassies.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. that was kind of funny for me. Like these, like damn, imagine like your life ends. Like you spent your year trying to be like the president of a country, and now like a 16-year-old is gonna like just end you, like murk you, execution style. That's wild.
I like the scene where Khmer Rouge basically is giving like rations to the embassy, and they bring out like these two fat big pigs
Yeah.
from the car, and they put it in front of the embassy and say like, "Eat pig."
Yes. That was trolling. That was trolling to the umpteenth degree.
Yeah, it was like, this is what we think you eat all the time, you fat bacon eating Americans and
Yes. Yes.
Europeans. And
Yes.
also like pig has different, symbolisms.
Yeah, a lot of things, right? Like we killed this pig, like we killed, the American pigs who tried to take over our country. But on the other hand, though, you could make a fire ass like dinner out of like those pigs. Those pigs were fat, healthy. Those are some big
Yeah,
hogs.
they're not gonna like do anything to the foreigners because then they could like have international war
Yeah, big
with
problems.
Europeans and America. So yeah, they're not gonna do that, but that was just like a way of saying like, fuck you.
Yeah. This movie also made me think of like this Silence. In Silence, the missionaries, they were foreigners, but they weren't killed. They were tortured and repurposed. But the Japanese would rather inflict harm on their own people than the foreigners. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that makes me think a lot about like the psychology of people, right? Like it's easier to hurt people that look like you rather than somebody you think is a guest in your house. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And also, like, if you kill the foreigners, it's not going to do anything.
Yeah, it's not going to do anything, but in a lot of ways, it's like, you have possibly more issues with the people who are the foreigners in this case, right? Not because they're immigrants, but because they're literally a part of the power structure. These are like the diplomats, the leaders of the army, the former government officials, shit like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. That's, it doesn't really like, it causes more harm to them to harm the foreigners in Cambodia
Yeah.
than any like benefits. So,
hmm
yeah.
Yeah. I also wanted to say there was a scene where Dith could have escaped to Thailand across the border. But then the guys come up and say like, we got a plan for you, Dith. We're going to make you a passport.
Yeah.
I was just thinking like later on, like when Dith is in the killing fields every day, he's like, bruh, I could be in Thailand right now, but I listen to my stupid British friends. Like,
Yeah. I could have had like 5 lady boys right now with me laying down. And now, I'm
yeah.
in the killing fields.
I'm in the killing fields, and I should be like in a fire ass beach, right? What's that Leonardo DiCaprio movie, The Tourist? Like
Yeah.
he could be like on that beach right now, right?
Okay, I think that was in Italy, but sure.
No, The Tourist. I think Leo went to that beach in that film in Thailand. That's how that beach got famous because people were like that.
Okay.
One more scene I gotta say. I think there is a hint of racism in this film because if you don't remember, like at the embassy, they were like giving out food and there's like this white man who is like, you get out right now to like this Cambodian family. And then he like
Yeah.
continues to serve like white people like right after
Yeah,
him.
I
I don't know
saw
if you
that.
noticed that.
Yeah, I did. And I assumed, like, obviously, yeah, there's racism in it, but then also, like, I think they thought maybe they would be harmed if they helped Cambodians in that way, like give them food because they were collecting people from the embassy, like all the Cambodians that were hiding out in the embassies. But that was fucked up. Like, just give them food. What would it do?
Yeah. And what did you think about, when Sandberg is like back in New York, after they get separated, they have a tearful separation, and
Yeah.
Dith is like, I love him like a brother and stuff like that. And one of the other guys is like accusing, Sandberg of like leaving him or causing him to be caught up in this situation. Any
Yeah.
comments on that?
Like, for me, the way that Dith was parting and crying, it wasn't only because he was departing from his friend. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he knows his friend is gonna be alright in
Mm-hmm.
America, but it was also like, you know, the unsureness and the fear of what might happen to him.
Yeah.
Because of everything that was happening at that moment.
Yeah.
You know, in the capital. So I think it was like that. Also, like him losing, you know, his white privileged friend who sort of like aided him into certain things, but also they were friends too. Like, yeah. I'm not like, you know, undermining that.
Yeah.
But I think it was like more of a fear of future rather than, oh, like, you know, I'm separating from my best friend.
Yeah. I felt like, you know, really probably very scary for Dith to, you know, once again, like you said, not having his white privileged friend and just being left at the mercy of people who might look at him as like a traitor because he was hanging out with, Sandberg all the time. And, he was always with the Americans, right? So.
Yeah.
Jumping into Act 4, it's Pran's survival in the killing fields. So while Sandberg's story unfolds in New York, the film shifts to focus on Pran's struggle to survive under the Khmer Rouge. Stripped of his identity and status as an educated man, Pran is forced to toil as a peasant in the brutal labor camps. The Khmer Rouge's extreme ideology regards intellectuals, professionals, and anyone associated with the former government as enemies of the state, leading to widespread executions and oppression. Pran endures years of forced labor, starvation, and dehumanization, surrounded by the constant threat of death. The countryside is transformed into the infamous killing fields, where the bodies of those executed by the Khmer Rouge are buried in mass graves. Pran witnesses unspeakable atrocities, yet he never loses hope that he will one day be reunited with his family. His resourcefulness and will to survive are his only weapons in the face of overwhelming cruelty. Any comments on those things?
Yeah, like everything that Pran went through, it was definitely hard to watch. Like, you know, the way that they were almost starving and there was like illness, there were people being killed and being forced into an indoctrination and like, you know, being smart or having like speaking multiple languages, being a doctor, being a teacher gets you killed. Like also that sort of mental slavery, right? And indoctrination. It was like very, you know, sad to see that those things happened. And because, you know, this is a true story, you know, you feel even sadder because, you know, these things happen to real people. And once again, like you see children who are like, you know, being taught to separate from their families, don't trust anybody. Because we have lots of enemies as, you know, Khmer Rouge. And, and then in the middle of everything, we see Pran like not believing the ideology and constantly being scared to be recognized and also just like basically faking it, till he makes it. And, it was just very brutal. Yeah.
What was the point of Dith stealing that lizard? There's this scene when he's out in the fields and he picks up a lizard and puts it in his pocket.
To eat it later.
He ate it?
He didn't. They didn't show us, but I assumed that he was so hungry that he caught the lizard to eat it later.
I see. Yeah, there was also a scene, I'm going to go back to Sandy, like he's in New York in his apartment and he's like just watching the footage of like people in Cambodia dying and stuff like that. And that just made me think like about just the essence of war journalism. Like what's the point of taking these images and stories and stuff like that and putting them out there and people just consume it like content like that? Right? Cause he's like sitting on his couch, sort of like how I would sit on my couch, like watching Democracy Now! Or something and like, yeah, damn, there's 100 people died in, you know, Myanmar yesterday. And I'm like, damn, that's bad. That's fucked up. What's for dinner? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So I don't know. That scene just made me think of that.
Yeah. I mean, especially now, I don't know if it was back then, but even back then, like, yeah, you're in America, in, I don't know, Brooklyn, and you hear about the war in Cambodia where most Americans don't know where it is. And, or most people even around the world. And yeah, there's like, you think to yourself, there's nothing I can do but to just like have pity and, you know, feel sad about what's happening. But they don't critique their own countries. They don't, do anything. Maybe the most people do would like pay for some aid organization.
Yeah. It's just a more, sort of motivation to donate to like your favorite charity or something like that.
Yeah, but the reality is like people have to go through this stuff alone, and they go through it alone, and it just like his states reminded me of like some of my like Arab friends right now, and they feel so deeply for Palestine because they are like close geographically, but also they know about like the history of the country.
Yeah, they feel it very deeply,
Yeah, they feel it very deeply, and they just have to like, share stuff online and maybe even go and protest, but nothing happens, and they're constantly online just consuming all this death.
Yeah.
And it weighs very hard on your soul.
Absolutely. One thing I want to say about Diff's survival techniques. So he's like trying to like grow food on the side of the little house that he lives in, but like this, the children who are now running the camp, who are not old enough to have the old ways in their mind, basically like come and like rip up his radishes and turnips and like look him dead in the eyes and say, "What you gonna do, grandpa?" "Nothing, cause you a bitch." And then like Diff is like sneaking into the barn, like trying to like suck the blood out of the side of cows too. I was like, that is raw. And they catch him doing that, and the kids like beat the shit out of him. And they almost kill him too. And he gets tied up and he's almost left to die there. But what makes this movie kind of come full circle is that one of the guys who was fighting the Khmer Rouge actually ended up joining the Khmer Rouge, and that was one of the guys that Diff gave a Mercedes-Benz symbol to. And the same guy who had the Mercedes-Benz symbol shows up, unties Diff, and, says, Mercedes, #1, and like, brings it all full circle. Any comments on that scene?
Yeah. When I realized that it was him, it was so sad because the first time we see that young guy's character, he actually has a flower in like where the gun would shoot out. On like inside his rifle. It's like a symbol for peace. To have a flower there, the flower come out of a gun. And then we see him like, basically being one of the people who inflicts pain on other people in this camp. And that was just like a very sad full circle.
It sort of made me think about, like what I said earlier, like, these were people who probably had to choose a side, right? You're on the winning side or you're gonna die, right? So he ended up choosing the Khmer Rouge after some time. And because he was young, he got promoted quickly. I wish it was like that now, though. Though I don't want to have a 17-year-old boss.
What? Yes, stop. No, nothing like the Cambodian Civil War, please.
Yeah. So basically there's one day when like Diff is like, trying to get rice out of the fields, and he's able to like like hide under the water and like slip away and escape. And in one of the film's most poignant and harrowing moments, Prawn stumbles upon one of the killing fields, where the ground is littered with skulls and bones of those who have perished. It is a visual representation of the genocide that have claimed the lives of so many Cambodians, and it marks a turning point in Prawn's determination to escape the horrors of the regime. But then he gets found again, and he's found by like the boss. And the boss sort of like brings him back and makes him like his house bitch. And like he's like bringing tea and food to the boss of the camp. And the boss sort of senses that Diff is smarter than what he is. So he asks him if he's like, an intellectual. And Diff just says, "Taxi, taxi. I drive taxi." And, the boss tries to like speak to him in French. And Diff is like, no, me no understand. Stuff like that, right? But then like he catches Diff listening to like the radio in English. And the boss says probably the funniest line in the film. He says, "Taxi driver, huh?" And yeah, basically he brings Diff in, and instead of killing Diff, he like reveals to Diff like, the Khmer Rouge are like having a civil war amongst themselves. And the boss sort of like cares about the people, but the leaders don't. And so he's sort of like fighting against the leaders to some degree, right? So he doesn't even want to be doing what he's doing too. What did you think about those scenes?
Yeah, the killing field scene where there were like thousands of skulls around Prawn. It was definitely very haunting. It like gave me chills because he sort of like stepped in the wrong thing and then ended up like being sunk down in all of these skulls. And like I cannot imagine like seeing something like that, being in a place like that where those people were real. You see like skeletons with plastic bags wrapped around their heads. And it was just a horrific, like one of the worst things I've seen in a movie, in like an emotional horror way, if that makes sense. Like, not like a scary, gory thing. And right after that, it actually, like, the movie goes back to America, and we see Sydney getting a reward. An award for, like, what he wrote, journalism award, and he gives this speech. Like, it's nice but sad at the same time, because the same time, like, Prawn is going through that. Like, Sydney is in, like, this hotel lobby, you know?
Yeah.
So it's very sad, but at the same time, we hear Sydney, like, standing up for Prawn, honoring his name, and also, like, saying, you know, critiquing the government. Basically saying, like, these people were discussing things in their room, you know, about to press a button that would release bombs, you know, onto innocent people, and the one thing that they were not concerned with were the Cambodian people, just the regular people.
Yeah.
And he sort of gives like this anti, you know, government politics speech, which was nice to hear.
Yeah, I liked that part of the film, but I just really loved the love letter he wrote to Dith. Like, I miss my boo so much. He's miles away from me. Our hearts might be separated, but we're one always. It was very touching, you know, how he wrote about how much he loved Dith and couldn't wait to hold him in his arms.
And Dith was writing letters too in his head. Because there was like a monologue of him too, when like we saw him, and he was saying like, you know, everything is forbidden here. I don't know what to do, where to go, and all those things. And yeah, I think like also the thing that I liked is that Dith was actually very smart.
Very.
And I think it was like his intelligence and his obviously like survival skills that got him through the whole thing.
Is there a lesson in Dith's story, like smart people don't let people know that they're smart?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, especially in a situation like this.
Who here is an intellectual? Raise your hand. I am. Pow! Get shot in the forehead. Right?
Yeah, like Dumbo.
Yeah, don't do that. So yeah, basically the boss says to Dith, like, if something happens to me, I trust my son to you. And that's when I was like, damn, Dith, you got like the gift to make people just believe in you and trust you. Like, I really wish he was with us in Tanzania, man. We would have had a better time.
I know. Like, he's the perfect comrade, like I said.
Yeah. So yeah, anyway, basically, Dith is able to escape. So Prawn finally manages to escape from the labor camp and during a treacherous journey through the jungle to reach the safety of a refugee camp on the Thai border. It's an arduous and dangerous trek, but Prawn's perseverance pays off, and he's ultimately able to reach freedom. Okay, ChatGPT, I'm disappointed in you. Tell the true story. What really happened is the Vietnamese showed up. The big bad communists, the good communists, I guess in this case, showed up and started bombing Cambodia because like they had beef. Like they were fighting over territory. I think Cambodia tried to invade Vietnam or something like that. So the Vietnamese send their soldiers, their tanks, their planes, and they're fighting the soldiers there. And the Cambodians, the Khmer Rouge, start fighting amongst themselves. And the boss who entrusted his son to Dith gets shot in the face by like a 15-year-old boy who was like, "Shut up, grandpa." And like, Dith is able to escape because he got a map from the boss that basically says this is the route to cross the border into Thailand. So Dith is like traveling with like his group, like they're in Lord of the Rings or something, and he's carrying the son of the boss. And, you know, they're crossing these places. They almost get captured, but the people, one of the guys that he's walking with steps on a mine while he's holding the boss's son, and Dip is like, don't move. And the guy's like, I'm a move. And he picks up
Yeah. Sorry, I was so angry at the guy. Like, bro, you're gonna die. So at least save the baby. What the fuck?
Yeah. But, he basically, it's all in Cambodian, so we don't know what they're saying, but I'm pretty sure Dith was like, give me the baby and you can live without a leg. And he's like, fuck it. If I can't have a leg, nobody can. So, yeah, basically the baby gets hit with shrapnel and Dith tries to carry the baby over to Thailand, but the baby dies in his arms and he gives it like a ceremony where he burns the body and prays over it. And then he crosses the border into Thailand and sees, the Red Cross. Any comments on those scenes?
Yeah, that escape was crazy because it's the type of escape where, like, they're in the freaking jungle. They don't know exactly where they're going. Yeah, they have a map, but it's not like map,
Mm-hmm.
It's just like some circles and some arrows, basically. And it's just like, and also when the kid got injured, Dit was running. Like, how are you running to another country? Like, that's how he really wanted to save the baby, obviously, but he couldn't, and it was very sad when the kid died, because I think it reminded Dit of his own children as well. He was a father, so yeah, that was very sad for me, and I think that was the moment I almost dropped a tear. Yeah, that was like the most emotional scene for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was just like a crazy, running away thing.
I think the scene that almost made me cry was like the mercy the boss showed to Dith, because I liked the way he was like, because earlier we saw him like murder doctors, and now here he is like trusting Dith.
He's not the same guy.
He gave the orders. He said, everybody who's an intellectual, raise your hand. He gave
that was in a different camp.
That was the same camp.
Okay.
I swear it was. It was the same guy who gave a talk and said, raise your hand if you're smart. And some people raised their hands. And then later on that day, they all got killed. So that was his orders, right? But,
okay.
Anyway, I like that scene. That's the one that moved me the most. But, yeah.
That's kind of like a weird scene to be moved by.
I don't know. I like scenes of mercy. I like scenes that show people like can have a heart and they're, acting out in the system, but they have a different mentality.
No, you were just emotional because you saw a good communist.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe part of that too, possibly. You exposed me. But, yeah, I was kind of shocked the baby died because British movie, right? I don't know if the Brits do it that different, but usual rules, pregnant women and babies don't die in like English films.
Well, I mean, this was a very realistic movie.
Yeah. Shocked about that. But, yeah, basically the movie kind of ends very quickly after that. So Schanberg continues his efforts to locate Pran, clinging to the hope that his friend is still alive. He works tirelessly, contacting international organizations, Cambodian refugees, and anyone who might have information about Pran's whereabouts. Schanberg's feelings of guilt and responsibility for Pran's suffering are central to the emotional arc as he grapples with the consequences of his decisions during the war. And the final part of part 5, finally, in a moment of profound emotional catharsis, Schanberg learns that Pran is alive and has made it to a refugee camp in Thailand. The film's climactic scene sees the two friends reunited after years of separation and suffering. And they kiss. They have a long passionate kiss in front of all these young Cambodian people. All right, what did you think about, basically the ending?
First of all, obviously, like, I was happy for, Pran to be able to find a refugee center. And the thing is, like, when Sydney found out the news and then he called the family of Pran, right? And he's talking to one of his kids, and he's like, no, I have some news for you. You have to write it down. No, write it down. Shut up, bitch. Just write it down. Like, bro, just say that their father is alive.
I know. I would scream that through the phone. Your daddy ain't dead. Your daddy ain't dead.
Yeah, like he was like so annoying there. And yeah, obviously when they, made it back to each other and, Sydney went there, it was emotional. And then like Prawn says, "Have you been?" Like nothing happened to him in 4 years. And he's wondering what, Sydney is doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's such a moment that you don't know what to say.
Yeah.
And we also learned that, I think like the last words are, Sydney says, "Do you forgive me?" And Dith says like, "There was nothing to forgive."
Aww. Then they kiss.
No, they don't. And like all the other Cambodian people are looking at Sydney like, "Damn, I wish I had a white friend."
That was the most envious looks, like the envy on their faces. Envy and confusion. Because they had
Yeah.
never seen a man like just jump in another man's arms like that. Like
Yeah,
this
the way he
wrapped his
jumps,
legs
like,
around his waist. Like you do not wrap your legs around another man's waist jumping in his arms like that. That's wild.
yeah. But it's just like probably Prawn lost so much weight during the war, is that he was like 30 kilos or something.
Yeah.
So when he jumped, he automatically like defied gravity and like just ended up on top of Sydney.
Yes. Ending was cool, a bit abrupt. I didn't like how Prawn's teeth, like he made it to the Red Cross and his teeth got even worse. Like they were all rotted at the front and they weren't like that in the camp. So I guess that shows like the camp had better hygiene.
I mean, we didn't see his teeth in the camp because he didn't talk a lot or smiled at all.
Yeah. But damn, like, I don't know, something about his teeth really disturbed me. Like, that's not the last thing I want to see.
Well, come on. The man was suffering for 4 years, Simon.
But I think this movie is so hyper realistic. They made the actor like not brush his teeth for like 3 weeks to get that look.
Wow. I don't think you can get that in few weeks, but sure.
Yeah. Anyway, a little trivia about this film. The person who played Dith was the first Asian American actor to win an Oscar for supporting actor. Now I find that a bit offensive because Dith carried this movie on his back like Atlas. My guy was like the star of the show. Like whoever played Sandberg, he's alright, but Dith is on another level. So shout out to him. And he actually got killed. He was murdered in a robbery in LA by like some Asian gang members. And they took his Rolex, they took his money and stuff like that, but he didn't want to give up this chain that had a picture of his ex-wife who died in the killing fields. So the people like killed him because he didn't give up his chain. That's the official story. But some people believe he was killed by the Cambodian government because he was in this big movie that made their country look bad while he was living in America, by the way. So yeah, any comments on that?
Yeah, I think like, the real life of the actor, what's his name? Haing S. Ngor, maybe. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong, but the real life of him, he was also a gynecologist in Cambodia, and then the war happened, and he came to America as a refugee, and he was casted to this role, chosen for the role, and then he won the Academy Award and things like that. And then he gets somewhat, I guess, assassinated by his government. It goes to show, like, even how real, like, these politics play on people's lives. And, like, he couldn't escape even if he was at the other part of the world.
Yeah.
Which is, like, very, very sad.
Yeah.
Like, R.I.P. to him.
Yeah, this movie's real. It's like, I think there was a part in this film where two of the white guys are talking and they say, well, it's been real. And like, that's how you feel after watching this film. Like, damn, it's been real. Like, and when you find out some more trivia about it too. But, yeah, the real Dith died in 2008. And I don't know if Sandberg is still alive. Do you know?
I'm not sure, no.
I'm pretty sure he's dead too, because
he looks very old, like on his Google picture, like all white hair and things like that. Sam Waterston, right?
No, well, not the actor. I'm talking about the real Sandberg.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure he's dead too. But either way, these are lives. Like these are real 20th century live stories. And once again, just to wrap up this review, I liked I can't say I liked this film, but I do appreciate it for what it is. Its story, it's moving. It's a really raw depiction of war. And overall, I give it like an 8.5. Only watch this movie if you're into like Vietnam War history, I guess. And also maybe if you want to see something that might move you to tears and it won't gross you out with the gore and the violence. So that's it.
But it will hurt your heart.
Yes.
It will hurt your little heart because it is sad. For me, I mean, I agree with you on the fact that I appreciate that the story was told. Mm-hmm. And, I sort of like, it did affect me in terms of like how, once again, grasping the reality of war and who it actually harms, which is like the regular people, the civilians. And, but other than that, I just watching this movie was a bit dreadful for me, I have to say. Even though I think the acting was good, scenery was good, it was just like too long for me, and maybe I was not in the mood for it, so I'm gonna give it a 6.5 with notes that might change. But at the same time, I don't think I would watch this movie for the next 5 years again.
Yeah. This is a movie like you would watch and you definitely remember it. Like it's not forgettable, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it'll put you to sleep though. If you need some, cure for, what's it called? Insomnia, you can put this on too as well.
Yeah, it's a bit of a slow start.
Though there are some jump scares, like the car bomb scene, like in the first 10 minutes and like other bombing scenes. I think they're jump scares, low key.
It did not make me jump scary, but
yeah. It kind of did for me. Kind of did.
Okay.
All right. Well, shout out to our guy Avery Adams as well. And this has been episode 87, Simon Akdi and movie reviews. If you have a film you want us to watch, put it in the chat, put it in the comments. We'll try to get to it. And like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And y'all be easy out there. Peace.